The Dutch Grand Prix is over and F1 is moving straight on to the next race at Monza, which means that it's time for my preview and predictions for the Italian Grand Prix. This is a series where I'll be previewing and then at the end of the video I'll be giving out my early predictions for the upcoming Grand Prix. Now let's get to the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top 5 teams of McLaren, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes and Red Bull later on, so stick around for that. The Italian Grand Prix is once again a completely different challenge for the teams, especially compared to the last race at Zandvoort. The Dutch Grand Prix required relatively high downforce as the circuit has a lot of corners and it was a very technical circuit. However, the Italian Grand Prix is the lowest downforce circuit on the calendar as the circuit comprises of very long straights and it is only separated by a few chicanes. Due to the high speed and low downforce nature of the Monza circuit, the Italian Grand Prix is the shortest race of the year, with the race time typically being between 75 and 80 minutes long, and this means that, if the race is boring, at least it will be over pretty quickly. The circuit will suit teams that are very efficient in a straight line, and are typically very low drag. This means teams like Williams are likely to do very well this weekend. Alpine could also have a stronger weekend in the midfield, and teams like maybe AlphaTauri are probably going to struggle a little bit more than they already have done so far this year. The Italian Grand Prix sees the return of the alternative allocation qualifying format, and this format means that the teams will have to use the hard tyres in Q1, the medium tyres in Q2, and the soft tyres in Q3. That is, of course, if qualifying is dry. Based on the current forecast, it is not guaranteed that the race weekend will be dry, so we'll just have to wait and see what actually happens with the weather. Because of the alternative format being used this weekend, Pirelli have opted to go aggressive with the tyre choices, and that means that the tyres this weekend will be a step softer than they were last year, meaning that we're going to have the C3, C4 and C5 compounds, which are the softest in the Pirelli range. Last year there was a grand total of 28 pit stops, with the majority of drivers doing a one-stop and a few having to do a two-stop strategy. With Pirelli going aggressive on the tyres, I think it will be still another one-stop race. However, should the safety car come out at the right time, then we could see that change into a two-stop strategy. One of the reasons why Monza is usually a one-stop as opposed to a two-stop is because not only is tyre wear very low, but also the pit lane loss time is very large due to how long the pit lane is down the very long, very fast straight. Only teams like Haas, who are typically very hard on tyres, may struggle and be forced into a two-stop strategy. Even though Monza features multiple long straights, overtaking is not actually very easy, and the reason for that is because the teams tend to run very low downforce, meaning that the drag reduction system is generally less effective because they've got less drag to dump. However, with that being said, last year there was 58 on-track overtakes. To help with overtaking, the Monza circuit features 2 DRS zones. The first DRS zone is on the exit of the 2 Lesmos and on the run down into the Ascari chicane, and the second DRS zone is on the exit of the Parabolica curve and is to be used down the pit straight into the Rettifilio chicane at turns 1 and 2. Last year's pole position was a 120.161 set by Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and the fastest lap in the race was a 124.030 by Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. If qualifying is dry with the softer tyres being used, then pole position time will almost certainly be beaten. The fastest lap time probably will be beaten if any driver has the option to go for a fastest lap at the end of the race as well. I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. I've just passed 3k subs and the next goal is 5k subs. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about the top 5 teams, and let's start with McLaren. For McLaren, the Dutch Grand Prix was a large missed opportunity as Lando Norris finished all the way down in 7th place and Oscar Piastri even further down in 9th place, despite the fact that Norris was on the front row of the grid for the start of the race. The race should have been much better for them, and they had decent pace, but too many strategical errors meant that they were one of the bigger losers from the Grand Prix. Due to the Italian Grand Prix being a lower downforce circuit, it's pretty hard to say how McLaren will get on. Based on earlier in the season, it is likely that it will be a little bit more difficult for the McLaren team, but ever since they brought that big upgrade, you can't really tell where they actually are, and that is because at Spa, which was the last lower downforce circuit, McLaren opted to run high downforce, meaning that you don't have any indication as to how well they will actually do on low downforce. If there is any rain though, then it is possible that McLaren could have a good race, that is if they get the strategy right. For Ferrari, the Dutch Grand Prix was a disaster, as Charles Leclerc was forced to retire due to floor damage, and Carlos Sainz finished in 5th place, but likely missed out on a podium given that Perez had a penalty, and Gasly had the pace over Sainz. After a difficult race, Ferrari will be looking to bounce back, and they will have to, as the Tifosi will not be satisfied with another poor result, especially at their home race. With the Italian Grand Prix featuring softer tyres, and also with the straight line efficiency of the Ferrari, then I believe that this race will go a lot better for the team. Charles Leclerc will be desperate to bounce back and find a way onto the podium to rebuild some confidence in his team and in the car. For Carlos Sainz, he is still looking for that first podium of the season, and the Italian Grand Prix will be the perfect place for him to score that first podium of the year. For Aston Martin, the Dutch Grand Prix was a much needed return to form as Fernando Alonso finished the race in 2nd place. The tricky conditions were perfect for Alonso as he nailed the entire Grand Prix, and of course with it being a high downforce circuit, meant that he was able to maximise the strengths of the Aston Martin car. However, the Italian Grand Prix is much more likely to be difficult for the team. Aston Martin have struggled with straight line performance all year long, and due to the high top speed nature of the circuit with the lowest downforce configuration of the year, Alonso will be fighting very hard just to probably finish in the top 8. For Lance Stroll, he finished the race in 11th place at one of Aston Martin's stronger racers. Because of that result, the Italian Grand Prix is likely to be very difficult for the Canadian driver to even finish in the points this weekend. For Mercedes, the Dutch Grand Prix was a difficult race as Lewis Hamilton finished the race in 6th place and George Russell failed to finish the Grand Prix altogether. For the Italian Grand Prix, Mercedes will be looking for a better result, but I'm not 100% sure the Monza circuit will be the right place for them to finish on the podium. The competition will be strong in Monza, and I'm not quite sure where Mercedes will be in the pecking order. They are one of the stronger teams when it comes to straight line performance, which will probably work for them at this circuit. But I do anticipate that the fight between Mercedes and Ferrari in the fight for the second best team will be very hard fought, and based on the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, then I don't think Mercedes will be on the podium this weekend, as I think Ferrari just have the edge when it comes to straight line speed efficiency. Finally for Red Bull, the Dutch Grand Prix saw Max Verstappen equal the all-time record for consecutive race victories, as he has now won the last 9 races in a row, and it is very likely that at Monza, Verstappen will break the all-time record by winning 10 races in a row. For Sergio Perez, he missed out on the podium after speeding in the pit lane during the wet portion of the Dutch Grand Prix, but at Monza, Red Bull will be looking very strong as they can maximise their straight line speed advantage, and they can probably get away with running a little bit more downforce than their rivals, but yet maintain the straight line speed performance. I think it will be very likely that both of the Red Bull drivers finish the race on the podium, and it will be very likely that Verstappen will win his 10th race in a row, because based on the Dutch Grand Prix, even if Sergio Perez does find a way ahead of Verstappen, then the Red Bull team will probably try and find a way to make sure Verstappen is back ahead of Perez, because, well, that's just what they did in Zandvoort, let's be honest. So, with that in mind then, what are my early predictions for the Italian Grand Prix? Well, for pole position, I think that it will be yet another pole position for Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, as they are so strong in a straight line. And in the race, I think that the top midfield driver will be Alex Albon in the Williams, as Williams will be feeling very confident going into the Italian Grand Prix due to their car being very low drag and very low downforce in general, and that means that they're going to be a rocket ship in a straight line. For the top 5 though, I am going to say that in P5 it will be Lando Norris in the McLaren, in P4 it will be Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, P3 will be Charles Leclerc as he will want to bounce back for Ferrari, P2 will be Sergio Perez, and of course Max Verstappen will win the Italian Grand Prix and he will break the all-time record for consecutive victories. But that is what I think. The question is though, what do you guys think? In the comments down below, let me know, and as always, comment, leave a like and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.